Welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Spiritual Ninja podcast, where we have heart to heart conversations with people who live with spiritual depth and elite performance. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the Spiritual Ninja podcast. I'm really excited to have this time together with you and to dig deep into your own process of spirituality and how you apply that to your life. And the Spiritual Ninja podcast, I have these two big ideas. One is one spirit, many paths. So each person has their own unique path, even if they're in the same religion or same spiritual practice. And the other is how practical spirituality is to be able to live a fulfilling life on the inside and the outside. So I like to just start with your own personal spiritual journey. For many people, when they look back of how it started, sometimes a situation in life happens. Sometimes they're just really disillusioned with life. Sometimes they meet somebody. And then once they go on this path, they have their own internal journey of how they practice to connect to the deepest thing within themselves. And then maybe also how they deal with things that come up on the inside. So I would love for you just to share your journey of when you began your spiritual journey and what it was then and what it's like today.
So I was raised Catholic, born into a Catholic family, one of 5 kids. We went to church every Sunday, went to Catholic school through high school, had a spiritual relationship early on, but went to mass, but wasn't actually connected to a lot of the ritual. And I was an altar boy, but that was mostly because you got to skip the first period if you went and helped out at the church. And I remember going to the church and having conversations, with God in prayer, never getting responses, but having that just contemplative space. Like I think many folks in Catholic kind of upbringing got a little bit disillusioned as, saw some of the challenges that the institution faced. And by the time I was in high school was very much anti-Catholic, like just as part of that, anti-God, and not atheist or agnostic, but very much like, I don't know about organized religion. I've had these experiences, but the institution has just felt off. I was also influenced by my family experience of a good amount of early deaths in the broader family. We lost a sibling, and then my mother lost a couple of siblings that were, just cancer. And so dealing with death kind of early on in life and starting to really appreciate the beauty of life and the sacredness of life and feeling just this gratitude for the ability to share the conscious experience. And I think that really put me on a path towards wanting to understand, why are we here? How can we do this well? What do I really think is important in life? But that kind of brought me up through high school, and in this questioning religion, questioning spiritualities, questioning source, however you want to frame it up. Got to go to Italy and had an audience with the Pope John Paul II at the time. And we did it because our school was letting us go on a trip, me and my buddies. And we were like, okay, well, it's Catholic school. Like, we'll go to the Vatican. And that would be a good reason for them to give us an excuse to, spend the month in France and Italy. So I had this experience with the Pope, and we get there, and, the night before we're doing this papal audience, they connect you with the local person who's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. He says, there's going to be folks there, and they'll read the gospel in these different languages. And then they'll introduce your group. If you speak that language, you get to say something. And that's kind of the little thing. So if you want to think about how you want to acknowledge the fact that you're there, most people just wave or whatever it was. So we're talking about it, my buddies and I. We go to that audience the next day, and I was really not expecting much. I mean, I'm going in just like very anti all the things, but cool, this is a cool thing to do, get an opportunity. And I was so moved when the Pope actually entered the room, and just felt like he was grateful that me personally was there, felt this overflowing sense of just love and appreciation and gratitude. And something I maybe only felt in moments like childbirth, seeing my kids for the first time. But from this person that I didn't know, he didn't know I was there. And I was in some ways holding as this is going to be just whatever. So to have experienced that sense of love and connection from this person who was at the top of the hierarchy of the institution gave me this really deep, profound knowing okay, the institutions are still wrong, but there's something that is flowing through this person that is undeniable. And then I experienced a couple other moments of something operating in the world that transcended science. You really couldn't explain it in normal terms, whether that was the intuition, or waking up in the middle of the night with a thing and calling someone and them needing you to have that call, or just different experiences of like, there is something out there. Religions are flawed because they are man-made, and we are flawed by nature. It's like we can't ever create that perfect religion. The institutions have the power politics in it, but there is some sort of underlying thing. So that was kind of like high school. And to close the loop on the story, they go through the different gospels and they read the gospel in English and say, from St. Teresa's in Springfield, Ohio, we have this group of kids. And so I stand up and I'm like, give me a P. And my buddies go, P. And I was like, give me an O. And my buddies go, O. It's like, give me a P. E. What's that spell? Pope. What's that spell? Pope. Go Pope. And we had some shirts. We didn't take our shirts off, but we brought extra shirts and we waved them around our head. Like, go Pope. And the whole place went nuts. There's maybe like 3,000 people in it. Like, it's a small gym, right? One single, but just went ape nuts. The Pope waved at us a couple times. He's advanced Parkinson's at this phase. Like, he's not moving a lot. Got the second best reaction out of all the groups, second only to the Polish group, who he was from Poland. They came in like full regalia and sang Polish folk songs and whatever. So we had some fun bringing that to it, but
That's
left that
amazing.
experience really feeling, again, moved and connected. And then went, graduated from high school, went undergrad at Harvard, didn't go to Mass maybe more than once across the 4 years that I was an undergrad, but got very curious into, okay, Catholicism didn't lead me to where I wanted it to go. What else is out there? And went deep into a study of all the world's wisdom traditions, religious traditions, whether that was science, right? What is the philosophy of quantum mechanics, the science of time? Where does science lead me towards spirit in what ways? I studied Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism and Stoicism. And through college and then finding Brian Johnson, founder, CEO of Heroic, my gosh, I think it would take me an entire lifetime to study these religions. Brian's distilled them all, and I can read a couple of these summaries on, the Dhammapada, the Tao Te Ching. And I went deep into those books too, but getting this like access to the wisdom and the spiritual traditions condensed was really beneficial, because I just had this intuitive sense that we are all more alike than we are different. And religions at their foundation are also pointing towards the same truth. And try to wrap my brain around, like, why are we killing each other? Like that if you are an actual practitioner of a faith tradition, it seems to me at odds that you can come to a conclusion that is, therefore, I need to inflict harm, hatred, fear elsewhere. The core hypothesis, the core truth, the core being of all these traditions is love. It is appreciation for life. It is love for what life is made of and those that we are blessed to share it with. And so I found it so at odds that people could use religion and faith as an excuse for separation, which led me to like, okay, if I study all these different traditions, maybe I can find what's similar, and we can move towards a more unified kind of advanced state of being. So that took me on that path, and over many, many years, got deep into meditation. I was first got to get 1,000,000 points using a Muse headband, which monitored brainwaves, biofeedback. Dave Asper's like, if you're going to meditate, might as well get some biofeedback to optimize it. But thought the monks are spiritual, the deep meditators are spiritual. Like, let me go down that path. Went into, yoga and embodied spirituality. My wife and I were married in a Catholic church. My parents were excited about that. And then we went to Israel with the church. I've always been excited, again, the intersection of religions, and to go to Israel, and, the church labeled it following the footsteps of Christ. But for me, it was, there's this land that's so sacred that so many faith traditions call their homeland, and they coexist there, not always well, but they share that, and just this curiosity for like really understanding that. And as we went and saw a lot of these places that are biblical in story and in nature, just felt this deep sense of, again, sacredness and connection, but not religion. So we ended up not going to church for like 5 years after we go to this pilgrimage. And we would tell my parents, who are very religious, like, look, we're going to Soul Cycle every Friday. And we're like, Soul Cycle is our church. You've got this music, we're moving our bodies, you're connecting with other people. There's this really group dynamic. And we really saw devotion to our physical bodies as a spiritual practice. And one of the things that we talk about sometimes in Heroic is, this is the temple, right? Like your body is the temple. Your body is the vehicle through which consciousness is able to perceive itself. who knows what happens before or after this body, and that's a whole nother conversation. But a healthy body allows you to have a healthy mind, a healthy spirit. Disciplining your body, if you want to have spiritual discipline and to be able to be a vessel of light, of love, all those things, it's much, much easier to discipline your body than it is to discipline your heart and mind. So like start there, you're eating, you're moving, you're sleeping, you're breathing, just these fundamentals of existence for us. Like we are animal and spirit together. So that became our church for a long time. Is like, this is my practice. Fast forward, having kids, had a realization that, I'd pushed Christ away because of the challenges of the religion and those, what I was taught as a kid in just like the organized institutional religion. So I've been working with Phil Stutz, just did my 300th session. So it's been over 5 years. Phil Stutz featured in Netflix documentary Stutz. When I started working with Phil for leadership and, organizational pieces, one of the things he talked about was his mentor, Rudolf Steiner. And Rudolf Steiner prayed the Our Father every day in Steiner's own interpretation of the prayer. He had this big crucifix built in kind of his main kind of compound. So Steiner, who very interesting backstory, but had this devotion to Christ that made me open my mind to, okay, what was it about this Christ event? What was it about Christ? If I'm willing to look to Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, all these other religions for truth, I should at least give Christianity the same, status of elevation. And because they're all pointing at same thing. So to discard one of them didn't feel whole and comprehensive. So I kind of went back into Christianity and Christ as a mode of spiritual awakening with the same fervor that I did meditation and physicality and all those things, detached from the institutional frameworks and whatever that I had been taught growing up, and really trying to get like a first principles. What do I know? What can we learn? That led me down a whole bunch of other sources. A Course in Miracles I've had a lot of fun with, Marianne Williamson's work, Alan Cohen on the Course in Miracles. I had the sense that regardless of what your religious tradition, we got to kind of align that like, okay, Buddha has got to be like a top 3 spiritual teacher, right? Like Christ has got to be like a top, regardless of what you believe about some of the supernatural things, like he's got to be at least top 3. Like it's a short list. And if that's the case, that he is one of those top 3 teachers, and we know with specificity how he taught us to pray, that seems like a good way to develop a spiritual practice. So I went deep into learning the Our Father in Aramaic. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Our Father was written in Greek in the 2 Gospels. And then into English, so like there's a derivative of translations. I speak a couple of languages. I know enough to know that like when you get to the sentence level, it's very hard to get one-to-one meaning. And that's why translating is, and so you do multiple languages removed, you start to lose some of the essence of the wordplay and the word choice and whatever. So I went deep into the Our Father in Aramaic. I pray it multiple times a day. To me, it is a beautiful encapsulation of almost all the rest of the wisdom and spiritual traditions, like is in that one prayer. That if you go to the mystical roots and the Aramaic roots, Douglas Katz, let's see, do I have it here? Neil Douglas Klotz. So Prayers of the Cosmos, I literally translated it in like my own version, but I do the actual Aramaic because, again, wanted to go back to that essence. And the prayer is beautiful. It is this father, mother, this vibrating source. The ancient word for heaven didn't mean some place that we get to after we die or some place in the sky. Heaven literally is right now, this moment of sound, breath, light vibrating in space. That is where the divine exists because we can see it in its resonant harmonics that are showing up to us in these different frequencies. So source of all things that lives in this vibrating now, let me create space in myself for you to live. Mm-hmm. Let our wills join together such that what's happening in heaven is also happening on earth in matter. And just this on and on that goes back to, one spirit, many paths and practical spirituality. That one prayer has that whole arc in it. And so it's become a beautiful reflective practice for me. But look, I've got 15 spiritual minded books that I'm reading on a daily basis. Sri Swami Satchitananda. You've got the Sri Ramana Maharshi. So you've got the, the non-dual essence of things. You've got Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. You got Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom, which is like pound for pound, maybe the most spiritually dense book ever. But there's a January 2nd, at the heart of all religions lies a single unifying truth. The general essence of all religions is to love your neighbor. And he says the essential meaning of every religion is to answer the question, why do I live and what is my attitude to the limitless world which surrounds me? There is not a single religion, from the most sophisticated to the most primitive, which does not have as its basis the definition of this attitude of a person of the world. You look at Marcus Aurelius' Meditation, which is, again, notes from him to himself. You get this out. I love this version, Ryan Holiday, Daily Stoic, gold-plated pages here. But it is the same truth through a different language, different lens. He's saying the same things. And all the major spiritual traditions, all the major wisdom traditions say the same things. If you watch Finding Joe, documentary by Pat Solomon, dear friend of ours, on Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, Rashida Jones is in there, and there's a line, she's like, she studied religion in undergrad, and she said she had this insight at one point. She was like, they're all saying the same thing. And I think that's kind of the truth underneath all these things. But it can't just be a esoteric, philosophical, like, oh, yes, we are all one and giddy up and bless the people who go live in caves for forever. It's pretty easy to be connected to source when you're not connected to other people or worried about doing anything in the world. But that's not the world that we live in. The true sacredness, the sublime comes through the mundane. It's a David Allen quote. But to be here, to make it practical, to show up in our physical body, in the world that we live in today's world that we live in, my spiritual journey to kind of put the bow on that story, and then we'll go whatever direction you want to go. As I got back into being more open to the perspective of Christ as a teacher as well, and then, digging deeper in the integration, all these different pieces, we started going to Mass again. And my genuine favorite activity to do is tied for first. Favorite activity to do while I'm at Mass is to have theological conversations with the LLMs. So ChatGPT, Claude, Grok. I will ask them about who wrote this book and who wrote this book and where is this thing and how many times is this thing said, and questions that I had in my mind to ask, priests growing up, but they didn't have answers, which, well, you guys are supposed to be the beacons. Like, what do you mean you can't tell me what? But the LLMs have been so fun because they have all this stuff baked in there. And so to have these conversations about, tell me more about this author, tell me more about this author, and going into the Gospels and, okay, who actually wrote which one? John, only person who actually wrote his gospel, and even then it was his community, and he wrote it last. But just this fun, deeper dive into what can we know, what do we know? But the LLM has been such a phenomenal spiritual development tool for me. Again, on a philosophical construct, it has to be put into action. It has to be put into practice, moment to moment to moment. I've got a tattoo. Lots of folks in the heroic community have this tattoo, Arte. If you ask the ancient Greeks, what's the purpose of life? They would say eudaimonia, literally translates to a good soul, being a good soul. They say the way to do that is to live with arte. Arte typically translates as virtue or excellence, but it has this deeper meaning of expressing the best versions of ourselves, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. I think the simplest way to codify that for myself is choosing love. The best version of myself is not a limited perspective. It is not a small perspective. It is not a hateful perspective. It is not sowing seeds of disconnection or hatred or any of that spectrum of emotions. Those are beautiful part of the life that we live in. Can't have the light without the darkness. Can't have love. Maybe you can't have love without hate, but that's part of the human condition. But if I'm honest about, in my best moments, it has been one of connection. It is one of love, and me at my best in some ways isn't me at all. My ego is gone. I'm connected into something higher, whether that is, Phil calls them higher forces, Christ calls them God or Father or the Christ principle. You could call it the Buddha nature or the Atman or the consciousness or evolution or the nature of matter to organize itself in different kinds of way. Like, no matter how you label it, there comes a point at which human understanding just turns into unknowns and uncertainty, like the nature of quantum mechanics. You cannot know at a certain level of size or depth where things are and where they're going. Uncertainty is baked into the nature of the world. And whatever is past that level of knowingness, we tend to throw some sort of label on. But I try and allow that thing to flow through me on a more and more consistent basis. Never perfectly, but that's long answer to that first question.
No, it's great. I mean, I can so relate to so many things that you shared as far as my own journey and very similar questions and sadness and confusion of how could somebody that says they love God and someone else doesn't love God want to kill each other or fight each other, where if there's one essence of life of God, then to honor that would be to love each other, not to hurt each other. And so that's always really, if there was one thing, I always say this in this podcast, but you always get to this point of, there's one thing that really made me sad would be that, like somebody says, I love God. I love God. My God says to kill you. It's like, that just doesn't make sense to the essence of it all. So that's 100% with you. And also your journey, I can not the same, but similar questions and really wanting to get to the root of it. And like they all say that very similar thing. So hearing your journey, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but today, if you were to say that you like to teach somebody one thing to connect to that source of life, it would be the prayer that you're currently doing. Would that be the way that you feel would be a way? If you said this is the only one I can do or the only one I could teach, would that be the one for you to share?
No, that is a current tool that I'm using, right? And even then, I can't tell you how many times I prayed that prayer in English without it having even a tiny, tiny fraction of the meaning and guidance that it now has for me. And that, I think, is one of the principles in the Course in Miracles, which awesome. And I picked that up because Mark Divine, he was on a podcast that we had, and he said it was part of his morning routine to read a chapter of that. And then, Mark Divine, Navy SEAL, unbeatable mind, just an extraordinary, powerful, strong leader, man, business person, all those things. And then John Mackey, similar thing, is on the podcast. Said part of my morning is reading Course in Miracles, and I never heard it until then. And I was like, perfect. These are two people who are very, very successful or very, very driven. Like, this is part of their morning routine. Like, let me see what this is about. Didn't understand what was going on for the first 3 months. Like, this is so, and which is part of the nature of A Course in Miracles. But anyway, the introduction says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And then it says, this is a required course. Whether or not you take it is not up to you. The only thing that is up to you is when you want to take it and what speed you want to progress through it. And I bring that up in the context of the question because each of us has our own course. Each of us has our own pathway to what we need to learn, when we need to learn it. That can't be shortcut. There is no, right solution. But I think what is universal for us is, and the guidance that I would give that's important for everybody, is to develop that relationship with an inner voice. In the Course in Miracles, in the Christian context, they call it the Holy Spirit. In the ancient Greek, we use the word, daimon. In Roman, it was genius. You can the conscious, the conscience, the soul, right? Like, whatever label we want to throw on it, that inner voice of knowing that doesn't always happen in words. I know that people have lots of voices in their head. It's not just a certain category. We all have lots of voices in our heads that sometimes are helpful, sometimes are not helpful, sometimes are thoughts. And there's a difference between a thought, the form that voice takes being an inner thought, and then the form that takes voice being just a feeling or an intuitive sense. And there's the biblical verse around, who was it in the cave? And he's like, come out when you hear the voice of God. And there's these torrential storms and the wind blowing and all these kinds of things. And then he's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Finally, there's this just gentle breeze. It's like, okay, that's the voice of God. So sometimes it can be hard to identify what is that voice, but developing the relationship with that inner guidance, which comes through stillness. It's hard to really be committed to this path without having a meditation practice, whether that's a mantra or the breath or movement is the meditation, but having a capacity to identify what is that voice within myself that's guiding me here. Emerson, right? Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Can you connect with your heart as your center? Or I framed it up as that droplet of divinity within you. Can you connect with what is true for yourself in the most deepest sense? That's that inner guidance. And then recognize that if it's in you and you are a human being, then it is also in all other human beings. What is true for you is then true for everybody. But that relationship has to start internally. So I go through the Course in Miracles every day as part of the practice. I use the prayer, I meditate, I move my body, I'm eating, I'm sleeping. those, we call them, it's a word from Michael Beckwith, blissciplines, right? The disciplines done well actually create this sense of bliss. Bliss is also Satchit Ananda, right? Being, consciousness, bliss. Ananda is bliss. So the different traditions arrive in kind of this similar sense of joy, but eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, this foundation for your physical body has to be a spiritual practice. And if spirit isn't your thing, I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, spirit probably is your thing. Like if spirit is not your thing, like it's got to be a scientific practice, because you are going to be more energized. You're going to be more capable of showing up to life in general when you are, in our language, dominating these fundamentals. I have such compassion for folks who aren't doing these things and are not feeling that level of just vitality in life. There's different constraints to that, but you couldn't pay me not to move my body. I eat well most of the time. Other times I go off the rails and have some fun. Like it's consistently better than it is worse. But if you don't have that physical discipline, it's hard to create that mental discipline and that connection to yourself, which again, for me, the foundation of any spiritual practice is can I connect with the spiritual in myself? Recognize that I am simultaneously totally irrelevant, this tiny drop in an infinite universe, right? And also the absolute center of my own experience. And if you push some of the traditions far enough, it's like, no, I'm the ground of being. I'm not, non-dualism is like, it's not my body in a world, but the world is in me, which is what Rudolf Steiner says happens after you die, you get turned inside out. Whole longer conversation. Anyway, you asked what the practice would be, some sort of connecting to yourself practice. The one that I found easiest for folks who have a hard time getting started is journaling.
Hmm.
Piece of paper, pen and pencil, old school journaling. There's something that happens where it's like there's enough distance between our mind and our hand that it can kind of get a mind of its own and just start moving. So if you ask yourself questions and just practice allowing the pen to move across the page, it's this way of mirroring this relational.
Yeah, right on. And recently somebody commented on one of these posts on social media about the podcast about God is man-made. And one of the martial arts we teach is called Sistema. And one of the essence of it is to release the extra tension and then your system's free. And so when I read something like that, in my mind right away, I hear a tension in somebody's head of having to make this explanation about God is man-made. And instead of being like, what is a path for me that takes me to my essence, to this voice you're talking about, to the universal in me, so I don't feel a separation. And there's the freedom for each person. If you want to say God is man-made, if that creates an expansion in you and a connection to the divine or whatever you like to call it, to the deepest science, to the essence, great. But for all of us to be aware when our thoughts or actions create big contractions in us that limit our own freedom and our own happiness, our own fulfillment. So one of the main points of this podcast is there's one spirit, many paths. Find your path. My practices have transformed through the decades, and today it is much more movement. During the past, I felt like sit still for an hour and don't move, otherwise I failed. And it's just to be open to right now in this moment, what is the entry point that'll help me get to that place in myself so then I can operate from love in the world. Now, for many of us, when you really start going into that deeper place in yourself, you become more aware of the things that seem to interfere internally, whether it's jealousy, competition, insecurity, fear, whatever it is, those things that seem to block your direct connection to love. So I'm curious for you, when some things come up in your day, it may just be like, oh, that's nothing. I'm just going to keep flowing like the river. But sometimes there may be certain things in your life internally that you saw were creating blocks. For example, one that you mentioned, I think earlier, was you put like up a little bit of a protection against, say, the Catholic Church. It didn't give you what you're looking for, but then you said, hey, I'm looking at all these other religions. Why don't I also look at Christ? So to me, that was, using your awareness to address maybe an internal contraction. But do you have a process that you do when the so-called big things come up for you inside to try to bring more love or healing to those, or awareness?
Yeah. Um, I I do have a process. It changes, right? But I also want to go back to like God is man-made. God made us in His image, and we returned the favor and then made Him in ours.
Yeah.
And so depending on where you grow up, depending on what religious tradition is part of your family or your community, like what you perceive as God and your definition of God is very much a reflection of the other people and how they see it. And that's why God has transformed over the ages based on what people were thinking about. But the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. Like even putting a label on it, God, that is a man-made construct. So I don't disagree with that comment that like God is man-made. And I also don't, I'm trying to remove the blockages from love, but I no longer beat myself up because I have them. And healing comes from speed, duration, and frequency. So let's say I'm unwell. If I can be unwell for shorter periods of time and only slightly unwell versus very unwell, and it happens less frequently, then I'm progressing towards better health, right? So if love is my goal and love is some version of getting out of the way and allowing it to flow through me, in science, the rate of flow is measured by resistance, right? If you can decrease the resistance, you allow for more energy to flow things. So if I can decrease resistance that's being created by both my own stories, my own upbringing, but none of that is bad or wrong. It just is. Like, it's impossible to be completely clear and clean. I mean, maybe some folks are. I heard Eckhart Tolle is there. Bless him. I like to hang out with that guy. Maybe Pope John Paul II was. But I'm not beating myself up for having those moments. And I used to see those as demonstration that I wasn't there yet. Oh my gosh, there I go flipping off against this thing. And now there's a sense of kindness and a sense of surrender to it. Big fan of Michael Singer, Surrender, the Surrender Experiment. So for me, again, speed, duration, and frequency, or intensity, duration, frequency, trying to, when I get triggered, when I Phil stops through the language, like get in the glitch, I get disconnected from that best within me. First step is awareness, right? If I'm not aware that I'm disconnected, good luck. I'm just going to stay on being disconnected. And being aware of that space, right? Viktor Frankl, in between similar response, there exists our freedom, but you got to be able to separate stimulus and response. And that's where the meditation practice comes in, the eating, moving, sleeping, just to be aware of, my gosh, I just said a thing that maybe wasn't the way that I wanted to do it. When I knew meditation was working for me, I used to work as a derivatives trader. My brother was also in the office. Big bloodbath day in the markets. He comes up from the pits really, really loud. And I'm like, dude, that's the wrong energy right now. Like, can't you see everyone's like, and I remember being aware that I was going to have a response that wasn't ideal to him. I wasn't aware enough to stop it, but I was at least aware enough to be like, oh, no, that is not. It's like, oh my gosh, there's hope there. So awareness has to be step one. And for me, once I am aware, I'll use any number of different tools or frameworks or techniques to try and get reconnected. And frankly, it doesn't matter which one I'm using in what context. And I think people get hung up on like, oh, the perfect thing for the perfect context. The only thing that matters is that you're trying. If you can notice it, that it's not happening, and then try and do something to get it reconnected in the flow happening, like that is the meta skill, that is the meta discipline to practice over and over and over. Personally, I'll take a breath. I'll get my physical body grounded. I'll be aware of what's going on for me emotion-wise. There's beauty and power in emotions and allowing them to be seen, felt, understood. I'll do somatic stuff. I'll do breath work stuff. I'll do a quick set of burpees or whatever it is, depending on the context. I've got young daughters, right? Like I'll ask them if, do you want a hug, or I'll apologize. There's a whole number of things, mental constructs. Maybe it's that day's verse of A Course in Miracles that I'm working on, is today's, I'm not alone in experiencing the consequences of my thoughts, right? I'm bringing a whole bunch of historical baggage into how I see everything. That's my thought. That's based on my history. It's not bad. It's just the way that it is. And the way that I see things has consequences for me. And it also has consequences for everybody else around them, because we're all bringing our own version of things. And going through those practices every day is going to help me show up in different situations. My gosh, maybe I can do the deep dive, psychological is, oh, well, my dad did this and my mom did this, or I grew up doing this. And so what I'm really fighting here in this moment is the ghost of their past. And that's why my daughter is saying this thing and I get triggered off. Perfect. May or may not be useful versus like, what do I want in this moment? Can I bring her the love? Can I help her bring forth her best by me bringing forth my best in this moment? So kind of a non-answer to the question. Like, I don't think it matters what the practice is. After this, can I be aware that it's not where I want it to be? And then can I try to do something, a mantra, a breath, a phrase, an action, like whatever it is, just to reconnect. I also really love connecting to my heart. So trying to actually feel my heartbeat without, touching it, but like able to create that somatic embodied physical connection. And then for me personally, trying to not get rid of my ego, but just take a broader perspective and a broader frame and try and find this place of non-dual, integrated, both the individual and the collective at the same time.
You're right on. I think when you were speaking earlier about, say, currently using the prayer, whatever tool you're going to use to enter into that deepest place in you, whatever somebody would like to call it, love, God, universe. I relate to love and universe. Actually, I relate to all of it, to be honest, but love would be my
Yeah,
number
love is
one
our
thing for
highest
sure.
word and a synonym for God.
Yeah, that's what I always related to the most personally with meditation and everything. So I'm just looking at like these internal frameworks, if you will. One internal framework is to try to be calm or to get quiet enough to hear your heart's desire to connect to the deepest thing in love in you. Another, I think, in my question to you about how you deal with internal, whatever you want to call them, bumps, roadblocks, insecurities, fears, whatever, would be to have a healthy relationship with those things, however you do that. Because to me, it's almost like I have a daughter, and the way I would love and embrace her for something that was bothering her, to have that kind of a relationship where these things in me don't drive me crazy. What I did a long time ago was I kept asking myself, what's beneath that? What's beneath that? I just got to the place of, oh, as human beings, we have fears and insecurities, and that's totally normal. And so now anytime those things come up, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's just my human fear and insecurity. And it's fine. And I feel love and appreciation and connection and all that. And it no longer controls me. Like, may in a moment, but overall, I don't have those things controlling me internally anymore as my overall reality. And that is because I developed a healthy relationship with them, whatever somebody wants to call it. But I think that's another big thing of learn to connect to the deepest thing in you and somehow have a healthy, broader, loving perspective of these things that seem to be interference.
And again, work in progress, right? We are all most of us are
Always,
continuing like works
always.
in progress. And there's really something beautiful about being fully accepting and loving of the faults, of the flaws, of the things that are part of our nature because of, again, any sort of historical reason. You can ask this question like, what's beneath this? What's beneath this? What's beneath this? And you can go through that process and doing so to try and change behavior in the future, right? And not just like do the archaeological dig, but can that help me the next time my daughter has a thing or the next time my wife has a thing? Can it help me do something differently? And for me, the space that's created in that inquiry, whether for myself or the person I'm with, brings a sense of just a little bit of separation where I can go, oh my gosh, this isn't about us. And if it's not about us, then why am I bringing all, like, how do I want to show up? And so for me, the questions that I'll love that I've been using most frequently, one is like, what do I want? So if I'm able to create that separation, do the little unblocking whatever's going in me, okay, even given all the things that are happening, what do I want in this moment? What would the highest version of me do in this moment? How can I be useful? If I'm a servant of God and life is happening for me, and I'm in a particular place, situation, in a particular time, including I'm triggered because of this thing and I got this emotional thing coming up and all the kind of historical patterns that are there. And we're living in 2026 and the edge of what does it mean to be human, silicon, carbon, creativity, create like, dude, what a time to be alive. Like the landscape is going through a metamorphosis, right? Like what it means to be
Hmm.
human
Oh,
is
yeah.
going through a metamorphosis. And frankly, I'm optimistic about what that means for spirit. I think we've been detached from our spirituality. I think we've had a lot of the religion of science has gained such power. And we've become disconnected from this part of ourselves that is very, again, pick the label, and even some of the like less traditionally spiritual labels, like there's some degree of humanity that I think we're going to course correct back into as we learn what technology can do that's we thought maybe was unique to humanity, but it turns out it's not. So then okay, what is
Hmm.
part of us that's different? But that question of like, how can I be useful if I'm here for this moment? Um, and I'm an actor in a play by powers that I don't understand, and they're far greater than me. Like, use me. How can I be useful in this moment? And it's very rare the answer is going to be like, well, keep being angry, keep being an a hole. Like, keep yelling at that person, keep spreading hate. Like, it's going to be some version of I love you, right? All the things that are going on right now with you, the emotional upheaval, the triggers, whatever it is, like, I love you and be love, right?
Mm.
And then that as a foundation is a pretty strong place to move forward. And not always a soft love either, right? If my kid's running into the street, I'm going to stop
Yeah.
them by any
Mm.
means necessary.
Yeah. And
Right?
that's the truth of the moment, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I love the Pima Chodron story about Captain Goodhart and Angry Spearman, and the Angry Spearman boards Captain Goodhart's ship, and Captain Goodhart kills him because he knows that if he let Angry Spearman go hurt other people, whatever, it would sow the seeds of all their destruction. So it was an act of love to kill Angry Spearman. Love isn't always this softness, but it is a good compass point to drive us towards greater connection, greater sense of flourishing going forward.
Yeah, I think true love is truth. And in the moment, what is going to serve the we the most, the deepest we the most. And I know, going back for a moment to the internal issues, there's been many times I've taught parenting workshops or work with school teachers. And a common thing I hear, it's so easy for me to love the kids, but it's hard for me to love myself. And what I always get to with my own experience, because I experienced a lot of that at one point, like insecurity, self-hatred, whatever it was, these internal human negativity towards self. And at one point, when I just started experiencing the state of love, there was no difference with myself and others. It wasn't like, I'm going to love you and I can't do it to myself. It was just the same. It was like, love is the reference point and we're going to do what we're going to do in the moment. And that doesn't make me any more or less than anything else. And it's just a beautiful way of living, but it doesn't mean always airy fairy by any means. It's actually, it's very powerful. It's not like that. I mean, it could be that, but it's what is truthful right now to serve the deepest essence of all of us. So I think that's really important. I was going to jump over to the external now, but if there's anything else you want to say about the internal before we switch gears?
Ayn Rand, right? To say I love you, one must first be able to say the I. And I think it's to truly love another, like it has to be love of self. A lot of these different traditions will come to a flavor of like, no, we are all one thing. And so it's not selfish or selfless. It is I'm loving other people because that's part of me and that's part of our integrated existence. And then from the internal to the external, I'm curious to see where we go. And then there's the also frame of like, there is no external. It really is all internal. And you can say, well, no, but that's not true because there's a world out there, there's a world in here. I can, cut a piece of paper and then it turns into two halves of piece of paper. Like there's definitely something going on out there. And that is true, but it's also all being processed by us. And in order for information to hit your system, it is in the linear view of time in the past. Like we're having this conversation and that's beautiful, powerful because the signals are going up into space and back down or whatever coils are going to. Like
Yeah.
there's time that's passing. And instant feels instant, and yet time is passing. It happens the same way. Try and look into a mirror and try and see your eyes looking at anything but your eyes. Like you cannot catch your eyes looking somewhere else because by the time you're seeing it, they're going to be looking straight at you. Light reflects off things and hits you. Sound reflects off things and hits you. Like all the information that you are seeing is stuff that has already happened that your brain is putting together, and in that putting together, it's putting frames on it. We can't make it just about the internal. I'm sitting in a cave. Okay, perfect. Everything's good. Da, 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 da. Like it has to be brought into our shared experience. It's part of why, it's called heroic. This is that self-actualization is not the endpoint. It's transcendence. Buddha nature is not the endpoint. It's bodhisattva. You reach enlightenment so that you can bring it back to the world. Heroic is serving something greater than yourself. This journey of spirituality has to be brought back. That's part of why people worship Christ. He was good. God was good being God, but they no, let me bring it down and demonstrate what an integration of God and man can be and do in the world. So it has to be more than just an internal game, but it never moves past being internal first and being this frame that we're putting on. And there is always something that we can do internally to shift the way that we're viewing whatever's happening outside. Phil gave me a line that was, you cannot attain peace of mind by winning. no one's ever won their way to peace of mind. And like, if you think about people like, oh, I'm at peace with that, right? It's when they've experienced loss. No one's ever like, oh yeah, we won the championship. I'm at peace with that. Like that's, no one
Yeah.
ever says that. And so if it's true that you can't find peace of mind by winning, then you can only find peace of mind by losing. We have to be willing to have external things, winning and losing, however we're framing it up in the world, and release that attachment to them. That's Buddha's non-attachment, right? And if we can do that, then we find this internal peace. And if internal peace is our state, regardless of what's happening externally, then on the flow through us back into what's happening in the world, just got a different character. And we're not grasping, not causing hatred. Anyway, external world, let's go.
Yes. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, to me, one thing I've always been interested in, you sounds like you are too, is just getting to the root of something. Like even when people say some of the comments you said about like this person does this thing, then I go, well, what's beneath that? Like, for example, there's this book I read a long time ago. I think it's called like How God Affects Your Brain or something. And then it said the healthiest thing for your brain is faith. And I'm like, well, why? What is that? And so I go into myself and I'm like, okay, what does that feel like? Oh, it's a deep letting go and internal rest, like and you can feel how healthy that is for our system. So I'm always wanting to get to the root of it, or why is growth mindset better than closed mindset? It's like, oh, well, one's a contraction, one's an expansion, so I always want to get for myself, like, what is that in my body or my brain or my breathing that's actually happening that's going to show me experientially what the science is showing or something. So there's one point in my life where I was kind of like, a monk in a way. And then I felt something lacking, that I wasn't fulfilling the outward expression of it other than being in the moment and loving, which was beautiful. I truly felt deeply fulfilled for a long time. But there was this awareness that there's like this natural creativity or expression, or putting the practicality of spirituality into action. And so what I've noticed for many people I've spoken with and observed and myself, some people have this all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, I was living a certain way, and now this wakefulness is happening and I need to totally change what I'm doing for career or how I'm living my life. So that's one part. Another part is, wow, I'm so much clearer now. Let me look at kind of the life I want to live. Like what, some people get, I'm not one of these people, but some people get super like architectural of let me design my life. And then the third part is how do you make spirituality practical? Like say you as a CEO and running a company, you got to get stuff done. So what does that look like using the depth for goals and visions, whatever you want to call it? So the bigger macro of your life, whether there's a career change because of that, and then how you make spirituality practical in goal setting or whatever you like to call it.
Yeah. This is another one of those things that's evolves over time, and really into the work of Benjamin Hardy right now. We've got a couple great books. Be Your Future Self Now, I just finished. Science of Scale, which is great. But one of the things he talks about is how, and he juxtaposes linear time versus holistic time. And he says that we are teleological, right? Aristotle says teleological. We have goals. Human beings are target driven. Nassim Taleb kind of went the other direction. He's like, no, we don't. Being goal driven is wrong. You need to be able to respond to the moment, so you can be anti-fragile in the moment. And the truth is somewhere in between. But I think that a lot of goals can be limiting, and we don't know the version of myself 1 year, 5 year, 10 years from now. Like I have no idea what they're going to be like. I have no idea what their goals are going to be. I have no idea what they're capable of. He's capable of doing. And so the combination of willingness to set goals and then allow those goals to evolve as new information comes, and to not limit ourselves and our goals. Marianne Williamson talks about this in some funny way. She's like, look, you may think you want this thing, but it's actually 1/100th of what's waiting for you if you would relax your, like, oh no, I need to get this one part in this one thing. No, but there's these other things, these plans that are greater and bigger for us. So I think to start on the first frame of like lifestyle design and changes, I think having a sense of spirituality in the early phases can make you attuned to places you're not living in integrity, right? And you get rid of those things. You try and minimize those things. And it's one thing to go from, well, I'm definitely not living in integrity with what I want to be doing, to, okay, I'm living closer in integrity to with this sense of goals and whatever. But we can go, again, too hard that direction. It's like, no, it has to be this particular goal and this particular timeline and whatever it is, versus this kind of sense of flow, right? And flow, you've got a goal that's a little bit harder than what you're capable of doing. The challenge is a little bit outside of the skill zone, not too crazy, but it's a moment to moment to moment thing. And can you connect with who you are? Can you show up each moment and do the next right thing? Wisdom can come from anywhere. I've got 2 young daughters, love Disney movies, right? Like I love the brilliant wisdom in animated movies and the Frozen too, right? Do the next right thing. So for me as a leader in an organization that is simultaneously very spiritual and not spiritual at all, right? It's we try and take a lens of what's the common truth and universal frameworks without imposing any sort of our flavor of it on anyone, and even using the label spirit as a label that some people are going to resonate with, some people are not. But to use what is the collective wisdom traditions in the world, I've got more than enough to work on in myself, moment to moment to moment, to notice good decision, bad decision, next decision. And so I try and use these frameworks as guidelines in a moment to moment to moment basis, and not get too concerned about a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is. And then just constantly be hungry for more learning, constantly be hungry for more. There are frameworks, there are things that I can use as a leader, and whatever the particular domain is. Like if you're an attorney, be the best friggin' attorney that you can be, right? And then you can be a spiritual attorney. Those things aren't, they don't not coexist with one another. And if each of us has a unique disposition, we have strengths that we're bringing to the world. We aren't all one massive unified spiritual soup. Like we're not just one thing like that. We are different things and one thing at the same time. That's the paradox. But like if each of us is individual, then true spirituality is taking that individualness and expressing it in however it's asking to be expressed, in whatever that voice is telling you is the right thing to do at any given point in time, right? If the voice is saying create this or do this or whatever it is, and laws of power is another one I got, Robert Greene, that's on the daily list, and he talks about this all of January. You have strengths, you have uniqueness. That is the thing to follow. That is the spiritual pursuit. It is because we are different. I don't know how many, 7 billion, almost 8 billion humans on the planet. The goal of humanity is not just to melt into one another and be one conscious meditation fest. It's to express in the different kind of ways that we are expressing. So for me, again, different people resonate, different people won't, but for me, I see each moment as an opportunity to be spiritual. I think that I pray with every moment of my day. Right? Like I'm not praying as like, no, every action is an opportunity to pray, to serve. The last line in the prayer in Our Father in Aramaic, before the little "for thine is the kingdom, power," etc. The last line is "keep me free from illusion," which illusion being a sense of separation. I'm separate, I'm unique, one little thing, nothing else matters. Like that opposite of the definition of heaven in the beginning. Mistranslated, lead us not into temptation. God is not leading you into temptation. Like that's not happening. Help keep us free from the illusion that we are separate. Take right action right now. It is not spiritual, and it is wasted if it does not come down to you as an individual actor doing something right now in this moment to unify higher impulse material reality, heaven and earth. Dibashmaya Afba together. To me, the ultimate conclusion of spirituality is, okay, what does that mean for you and me in this conversation right now? What does that mean for, next 15, 20, 30 minutes to play the role that I've been given to the best that I can, never perfectly. And frankly, I don't trust anyone who says they're spiritual who's uninterested in bringing that to the world.
It's a disconnect, right? I mean, the thing is, I'm intentionally have the internal and the external, but really it's just your state of consciousness that's being expressed on some level. All of us are doing that, but we are seeing it outside. But when you're present, you can also see inside. I mean, you can see somebody's essence and their intention in the moment, right? So it is one, but also we can discuss how we express our spirit in the world. And I think as for you and your role as a CEO, like, yes, experientially that when you show up as your best, you are going to feel your best and perform your best. You know that experientially, as do I. But you also have a role in the company of, we have these goals to touch however many million people, and you personally have to do more than just be in the moment and love, because you have to somehow get your team to do certain actions to create your goal. So I just think it's really important for people to understand that spirituality, just like we're saying, it's not all airy fairy. It also gets stuff done. Like you have a clear something you want to accomplish. You take the steps, you adapt, you chunk it. All these things that people do to accomplish things. It's not just be present and loving. You are putting that into something for you personally right now as the CEO of the company. You have certain responsibilities more than just being in love, because you and Brian or whoever is involved want to grow the company to whatever level. So I think people need to also understand that you are doing that. Like, you're probably very intentional with what you guys are doing.
It is like a very, very fierce commitment to, and it's not, being present and loving is not enough. That is not the end state, but it is the foundation. And
Exactly.
actions taken without presence, actions taken without love are highly unlikely to create the outcomes that we're looking for. You can chunk it, you can break stuff down, you can do all the different kinds of things. So the suggestion is not the end answer is be present and loving. The answer is like, be present and loving, and then do whatever the thing is that needs done from that present, loving, peaceful, grounded state, which it's not always fun stuff, right? Like it's not like a blissful flow all the time. It's like, no, we've made deliberate decisions. We have different things we're trying to approach, but we try and approach it all to the absolute best of our ability. And that's one of the things that I admire most in Brian, and was drawn most to in Brian, is just this commitment to, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to try and do it to the absolute best of my ability. I'm going to bring an intensity and commitment to that, no matter what the thing is. And so of course there's goal setting, and there's culture building, and there's scorecards and measurements and metrics and data and long-term plans and short-term plans, and daily created before reactive and deep work hours, and long into the night hours, and just all the different things that go along with living in the real world. But to bring an essence of presence and love or flow or whatever is to those things. I live in Chicago. Bears got good this year in football, and it's the phrase of like, the quarterback who's dwelling on the interception from the last drive is no good to us this drive. You got to have that blank slate and bring that performance mindset, bring that sense of presence, bring that sense of, okay, I can't change the past. Rafiki, you can either learn from it or run from it, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. We cannot change the past. We can use the past to fuel our future. And Hardy's framework of the future impacts our present. The goal that we set for where we want to go impacts who I am and how I'm showing up in this present moment. But no matter what goal I'm setting, no matter what I'm going after, if I'm showing up in this present moment with not being present and bringing an energy of fear, conscious leadership group, right? Above the line, below the line. If you're operating in fear, you're less effective, you're less powerful, regardless of whatever it is you're going after. And so have the goals, have the things you want to create, have the disciplines, have the structures, have the routines, do all the things that you need to do to create the outcomes that you want to create in this world. Just do it with as much presence as you can muster, and as many frequent loving moments as you can get. Even enlightened beings burn their bagels sometimes.
Yeah.
There are no enlightened people, only more or less enlightened moments. There are no, again, Tolle, I'd like to meet that guy, but he might be there. The rest of us, we're working, and bring a sense of simultaneously all-in commitment to whatever it is that we're doing, unattached to the particular time frame that it happens with, but a discipline in our moment-to-moment decisions, and a commitment to having any interaction that involves another human being be one of love.
Right on. So going back to me, these big buckets that we've kind of addressed, how you enter into this place in yourself, how you deal with things that come up. And then a lot of business people will talk about start with the end in mind. And I think a really great thing is start with presence. And then you could look at those different pieces, right? Because I think the presence is the clarity of what really makes sense and what are really the steps that seem right now to make sense, as opposed to imposing something that may not be the most appropriate thing to be going for right now.
Steve Chandler has a framework he calls the ladder of consciousness. He draws a ladder, and at the bottom you've got fear, hate, whatever. You move up the ladder, it goes into, love, safety, abundance, whatever. And just to recognize, like, where am I in the ladder in a given point in time? I love that framework, and I love taking it a step further. Think about, like, I live in a high rise. I'm 27 floors up, right? I can look out and see further than I can from the ground. The state of my consciousness, if I'm in fear, hatred, whatever, I can't see as far, and I'm seeing a different future. The higher that I can raise my present state of consciousness, the further into the future I can see and the different future that I can see. I'm Tall Bench Harmony Ham said the difference between depression and unhappiness is depressed people think the unhappiness is going to last forever. They don't see that it's going to end. And so if I'm setting goals, beginning with the end in mind, but I'm doing that from a place of anger, fear, distrust, lack of safety, whatever it is, I'm going to set and see different goals. And the goals that we set are really, really important because that's going to impact how we show up. If my goal is to win a gold medal in the Olympics, I'm going to show up differently than if my goal is to, play rec league, whatever. And the quality of our goals is dictated by the quality of our presence in this moment, the state of our consciousness in this moment. So absolutely beginning with the end in mind, crucial. And then recognizing that the end that we see will be in large part driven by who we see ourselves now, what's important to us now, the quality of our consciousness now. And then given that, allowing it to be this iterative, dynamic process. As we grow, as we get experience, the future that we see is going to change. No one predicted, couple people predicted where we would be right now in 2026, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The pace of changes is accelerating so much.
Right on.
If we're not willing to shift the future we want to see based on the future that we're in, we're behind.
Yeah, no, right on. So a couple more questions for you. One would be, what do you see as far as relationships, as far as whether it's your wife, your daughter, your work, as far as how relationships play into spirituality and being a human being and honoring all parts of a person and what our role in relationships are?
Let me see if I can find, Williamson's got a line on this. She says, all religious and spiritual traditions have the same ultimate aim, which is to help you love and be loving. And here's the relationship line. And the only way to do that is in relationships. So relationships are the key. So I think about spirituality and religion. Spirituality doesn't exist if not in relationship, whether that's relationship with yourself or relationship with other people like that. That is, again, go back to the amorphous blob. There is no relationship. It takes two things to be in relationship. If we are sons and daughters of a creator, we have to be different and separate in order for there to be an exchange. And so when I think about my wife, my kids, Brian, the team, relationships are the field in which spirituality unfolds and expresses.
Right on. I know for me, as doing what I've done for a long time in the role of teacher, coach, whatever you want to call it, I really fell into this at times where just because all day long I'm supporting people in their growth, then when I come home without realizing it, I was doing that to my wife and daughter when they weren't asking me to do that. They were asking me to be the husband and father. And it was really humbling. And once in a while, I still forget, but for a while I was really thick-headed with it of like, no, this will help you be happier. This will help you get what you're looking for. And it was just a spiritual arrogance, whatever. It's not a big judge other than the fact that like, wow, I was really missing the point that accepting and allowing everyone to be on their own personal journey and embracing them and loving them. That doesn't mean agreeing or disagreeing, but realizing that even if I think I see something clearly, that doesn't mean it's clear for that person in their way that's right for them. And so that's really been a beautiful thing of with my team at work, with my family, with anyone of just, hey, let me just show up present and loving the best that I can and be present to what seems like this relationship at this moment is asking for, or ask them, what are you hoping to get out of this conversation? So I'm really learned a lot with that of not thinking I know, even if I do believe it'll help the person be happier, to realize I don't know. They have to find their way, and I can be a loving, supportive person in their life, but not telling them. And every time someone's wanted me to tell them, it was their own imbalance of not connecting to that in themselves and fulfilling me and being needed as this teacher or sensei, whatever, instead of like, no, you have it. Let me just be with you. So I think that's been really beautiful seeing in relationships, the growth, the continued growth in that area.
That's a path that many coaches have tread. I just read a super short novella called The Lattice. Brett H. something got a Love Over Fear is his new podcast. Love this is like a 30-page whatever. The people in the novella, they map out God through science, and they develop this understanding of the fundamental nature of reality, and then they create another universe. And the universe is like a little unstable, and it's got different rules and whatever, and they're trying to decide whether or not to interfere and to tweak it after its birthing process, and ultimately come to this position which is that the act of love is to not, is to
Mm,
let it go do its thing. And so I think that that's part of that desire, particularly for me when I was starting out coaching, and this is before kids, and then with the kids, is like, I wasn't actually trying to help them. I was trying to demonstrate my own self-worth by creating a condition. And look, my wife and I have different perspectives on timeliness, being on time, and
mm,
she's the on time is late, we got to be early. I'm the like, oh, whatever. And it flared up most often when we were going on trips. We'd go to the airport and there was just like high stress, and I would beat myself up. I was like, man, if I was proactive enough and had things dialed enough, and I like, she wouldn't be getting upset. So because she's getting upset, that means I'm not doing what I need to be doing to help her not get upset. So therefore, this
mm,
is a reflection on me instead of just being like the nature of the situation. Hyperbolic example, but that same thing is like, oh, let me help this person be happy. Here's a piece of advice you need to have, whatever.
mhm,
What I was actually doing was trying to validate myself and my
mhm.
helpfulness or worthiness or whatever it was. And so now I'm trying to do that less. It
Yeah,
still pops up, but
I hear you.
yeah.
I hear you. So the last two questions, which are the questions that most people get to at some point when they're really questioning life and going on a spiritual journey, whatever people want to call it. Who am I and what is the purpose of life?
It's tempting to answer that question in lots of different ways, as I'm sure you've gotten lots of different answers. So I feel bad for people who don't laugh at farts.
And thus the meaning of life.
Yeah, well, they still get the same amount of farts, but they just get way less laughter. Um, you know, I am that I am. Who are we? Like, we are who we see ourselves to be. Why do we exist, or what's the meaning of? We are makers of meaning. I don't think there is an ultimate ground of meaning and why we exist. I think it is an opportunity for us to choose love and choose what meaning we want to make with the experience that we are collectively having.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, it is a very interesting question. And for everybody, it may change and all, but I think these questions and these conversations can help shift, like in the moment, the priority of, hey, what's the most important thing to me? Where do I come from? How do I do that? How do I treat people? How do I treat myself? And what do I want to do with my time if I do have that choice? Right. I know some people don't feel like they do, but at least the choice of how you show up. Well, I enjoy these conversations. I enjoyed connecting with you. And I always love how for some people I know or I've experienced in different ways before, but some people I'm just meeting the first time here. And it's really cool to have like the first conversation be about like these things that I think are personally super important for all of us to address in whatever way helps us live in the way that we hope to live. And so I'm really enjoy spending time with people in this way. And I love to get to know you in this way and hear your journey and your experience to where you are today and how your intention to really live fully this way and to keep lightness to it, right? To see the like I interviewed a rabbi recently and he was just talked about the humor of God, right? And I think just to realize that in that vibration of love, there's a lightness and there's also a humor and be able to laugh. Like sometimes in different fields, we'll talk about like the internal giggle, right? That internal laugh because you're like in on the beautiful joke of life, the love of life. And so I think all of that I sensed from you and appreciate and happy to see you doing what you're doing and appreciate your time. And so thanks for being here. Anything else you'd like to say on your exit from the podcast? Are you good with what you said at the end?
We're all doing our best. I really believe that. We talked before a little bit about, we're talking about trying to help other people be happy or the sense of individual and self. And I think that the relationships and to simultaneously honor your own experience as being everything that it's worthy of, and then honor everyone else's experience as being everything that it is worthy of, and that I've got a truth, they've got a truth. There is no third party agreed upon necessarily truth in all circumstances. I mean, you can, is the coin heads or tails? It's like we can agree on
Yeah.
that, but there's so many things that do have a degree of it depends on the perspective. Spirit is one of them. Religion is one of them. The nature of things, it's all one of them. But the game of simultaneously being all exactly the same and all fundamentally different, and navigating this together. So that's maybe it.
Yeah, right on. There's this kid's book. I remember when my daughter was younger, we used to read called Same, Same, but Different. And I think it's similar to that. Like, wow, it's the same and different. And I think to celebrate that, like you said earlier about how many people there are in the world and how each person has their own path. And I think if we were like a garden and each one of us has our own flower and weeds, whatever it is, to fully allow that source of life to express through our unique flavor, because this is our unique flavor. We can pretend, but it doesn't work, right? If you're pretending to be a different flavor. So I love that. I love like letting the divine freely express through your unique color, flavor perspectives. Welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Spiritual Ninja podcast, where we have heart-to-heart conversations with people who live with spiritual depth and elite performance.